My name's Nick Long. I'm an anthropologist of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And today I want to tell you a little bit about my hypnosis journey and things that we can learn from studying hypnosis anthropologically by immersing ourselves in the life world of hypnotists, hypnotherapists and their clients, and how that kind of exploration might be relevant for the bigger questions that we have about understanding the world that we ask here at the LSE. So my hypnosis journey began in 2012 when I met the man that you see on the left in this photograph. His name's Johan, and at the time I was doing a much more conventional project. I was looking at local elections in a part of Indonesia called the Riau Islands, and Johan was a journalist who was running a kind of election monitoring blog. And so I wanted to meet him to discuss that. We had a great conversation about the election, and then he mentioned, but of course, you know I don't just do this journalism stuff, I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. And that was a little bit intriguing, and I started to meet more and more other people in Indonesia who were also talking about having just done their hypnosis certification. It seemed to be a bit of a trend, and in fact it was a trend, it still is a trend. 50,000 plus Indonesians have taken hypnosis certifications, and although that's not a huge number in a country that has 284 million people, it's still a very large number compared to the number of clinical psychologists, which is only 4,000. Or the number of psychiatrists, which is under 1,000. So these certified hypnotherapists are playing an important role in supporting people's mental and emotional health, helping them deal with various personal problems. But they're not just using hypnotherapy to deal with clinical issues, as I found when Johan invited me to attend a mass hypnomotivation of high school students. You can't see it very clearly because of the lighting, but you have 150 kids lying on the floor of their school hall being given hypnotic suggestions and visualizations to try and help motivate them to put that PlayStation aside and knuckle down to high-quality revision ahead of their final exams. And programs like this became extremely popular. So Johan alone estimates that he's hypnotized 100,000 high school students over the course of his career, and many other hypnotists would boast similar numbers. So even if people haven't actually trained as hypnotists in Indonesia, many people have had a direct personal experience of hypnosis through programs like this. And so that got me very interested as an anthropologist. It made me think, firstly, what is hypnosis? As an anthropologist, someone who's an expert in the human, I ought to have known, I ought to have had a good answer to that. But actually, anthropological theory's not paid very much attention to hypnosis or the realm of suggestion historically. So core questions like how hypnotic dynamics were affected by cultural difference, different histories, post-colonial dynamics, had no answer in the existing literature. And I also wanted to know what this growth of awareness of hypnosis, a way of seeing oneself as a suggestible, hypno-psychological person, was doing to social life in Indonesia. So those were questions that I wanted to answer from an anthropological standpoint. And to fully understand them, I had to go deep within and train as a hypnotist myself. So here I am in 2016. I've just completed my own certified hypnotherapist training, one of many trainings that I took over the course of this research. And training as a hypnotist's really fun. You get to meet lots of interesting people. You get to learn all kinds of aspects of the human that you never hear about in LSE anthropology, or at least now you will, but historically you didn't. And you also get to experience being hypnotized yourself, because in these trainings, the other participants are the subjects, and you all practice on each other. And this was a kind of life-changing experience for me, opening up new horizons of what it was to be a human being. So from all of these experiences, a number of questions crystallize that I'm going to use to structure my talk today. Firstly, and this is the question that I most often get asked by people in the United Kingdom, is it real? Does it work? There's so much skepticism here in the UK. In Indonesia, no one ever asks, does it work? It's just taken for granted that it does work. But here, everyone wants to know, does it work? Is it real? And the answer is yes, it can work. And certainly I have experienced hypnotic experiences, ways of being embodied that I'd never experienced before. In 35 years of life, I'd never experienced things that you see on the screen. Here I am being mesmerized by one of my research participants. I've experienced parts of my body moving around in a way that I'm aware of and yet don't feel that I'm consciously directing. I've been able to experience very intense visual recalls of childhood memories that I do remember but had kind of forgotten about. And these are not just unique to me, these are experiences that are reported very commonly in literatures cross-culturally. So there seems to be some kind of patterning to these experiences. These are potentials that exist within all of us. They're things that we've got the biological capacity to do, but different ways of life, different ways of being socialized into the world give us differential access to them. So decades of going to school in England, going to university, being very cerebral, working at LSE, had not allowed me to access these kinds of modes of embodiment. Even though I didn't have to go to Indonesia to access them, there are hypnosis circles in England where you could access them, but I'd never gone to those worlds. So this opened up a new passport to accessing what some people like to call expanded states of consciousness. I don't know whether it's helpful to think of it as expanded and others as shrunken. That's a very normative language. But the point is we have these capacities, that we've got a differential ability to access, and certain social worlds give us more of an opportunity to than others. And that itself became an important way of thinking about how we compare and contrast societies. So yes, it can work, but not always. And in fact, one of the key issues that you grapple with once you become a hypnotist is how to deal with all of those situations where you try and hypnotize somebody and it just doesn't work. And trust me, having done this, there's nothing more terrifying than going to a party, someone is like, "Oh, so you work on hypnosis. Can you hypnotize me?" And then there's suddenly that kind of terrible moment of dread, because maybe you can, and if you can, well then, you know, your party trick makes you the star of the evening. But if it fails, then you're just a fraud or delusional or incompetent. I don't like being thought of as incompetent, who does? So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's very difficult to predict. There are all sorts of theories and ideas that circulate about why something might fail or why someone is better at hypnosis than other people, why some people are better at being hypnotized than other people. But none of these ideas really completely stack up. None of them are foolproof, none of them are decisive. And so much intellectual energy is devoted to making sense of this problem that what I came to realize anthropologically is that how we grapple with the imperfections of our suggestibility, how we grapple with the fact that we can be permeable, but we're not always permeable to other people's suggestions, has really profound consequences for how we make sense of the world, how we relate to each other, and it's a really important and underappreciated axis of social and cultural difference. And so that's something that I'm trying to develop and build on in coming up with a new anthropology of hypnosis and suggestion that takes these aspects seriously as axes of social difference. But there are also more practical questions that arise from this research. Something else that people ask is, well, if hypnosis can work, if it's as great as you say, like, is this the solution? Is this the solution to the national mental health crisis, the global mental health crisis that we're all well aware of? And clearly, it's not the complete solution. Like, hypnosis is never going to solve the root causes of problems. There are basic issues of living wages, ending conflicts, like dealing with these problems. You can't just hypnotize someone and get rid of all of that and suddenly, you know, their wage is enough or their job is no longer precarious. Equally, you can't just hypnotize somebody and completely get rid of deep, complex, long-standing psychological issues. It might not work, and even if it does work, it's not a perfect solution. Nevertheless, the hypnotists that I met in Indonesia did take very seriously the idea that maybe hypnosis was part of the solution to the mental health crisis that the country is facing. And rather than just dismissing that as naive or depoliticized or not thinking about the core issue, I think it's worth taking it seriously and thinking, what can we learn from that? How can we take inspiration from it even if we want to be a little bit circumspect about how much we invest in this as a key pillar of the solution. So one aspect that they were always talking about is that hypnosis is really about learning about communication. It's about heightening your consciousness of how you communicate to other people. Because for most of my research participants, hypnosis wasn't just a special thing that happens when you click your fingers and put someone in a trance. Rather, hypnosis was a way of thinking about all human suggestion. In any interaction, they said, you're either the hypnotist or the hypnotized. We take ideas from each other all the time. Imaginations, scenes get built up through the way we communicate. Words said by a parent, maybe in a moment of anger, oh, you're so stupid, lazy, you're such a disappointment, lodge deep in people's subconscious and come to fundamentally shape how they understand themselves and who they think they are. That moment of impressionability and suggestibility really matters. That's a moment in which you're hypnotized. And if you take that more expansive idea of hypnosis that sees all of social life as a world of suggestions that can lodge in our subconscious more easily or more difficultly at various points of the day, then you have to think carefully about how we live in a world of suggestions, an ambient, symbolic, and linguistic universe that we're all responsible for constructing for each other. And it forces us to be more mindful about what we say, more mindful about how we follow up on what we say to try and dislodge those suggestions, and to take responsibility for each other. And that, I think, is a very important aspect of how we can live together, rather than individualizing issues of mental health, parceling it out to designated experts who either charge a fee or are only available after a very long NHS queue, actually thinking about the little ways in which the language that we provide to each other can affirm, can support, offers a way of building a more healthy and happy future, because we know that high-quality social relationships are a key predictor of both mental and physical health. Equally, accessing these expanded states of consciousness opens up opportunities for everyday practices of care that do feel a little bit classically hypnotic, that might experiment with trances. This is not to say like everyone needs to go and start hypnotizing all of their friends, but here you see a scene where it's an extracurricular education centre. The boy on the left is about to take part in a provincial level storytelling competition, but despite being a star student, he's getting nervous. He's starting to make silly slips, like the pressure is getting to him. So his teacher uses a short hypnotic visualization to help him release all of that sense of stress, to increase his focus, to feel more comfortable in his body, to feel more grounded, to access his delight. And using these kinds of techniques, experimenting with the capacities for suggestibility, the capacities for vivid visualization that we all have, that we deem hypnotic, but we don't maybe access very much in the UK, as I was saying earlier, offers new ways in which we can support each other and provide practices of care to help make some of these situations less stressful and to make our lives smoother and more rewarding. So there are lots of small little lessons that we can all learn from the kinds of practices that I was observing in the field. So given that, the final question that I want to ask is, why isn't hypnosis taken more seriously? Why does it take a trip to Indonesia and a chance meeting with a journalist for me, somebody who's a specialist in the human sciences, to even be thinking about this stuff? Why isn't it widely known? And this is where I think broader issues of popular culture, visuality, the ways in which our society encourages us to think about hypnosis need to be held to account, because they've got a lot to answer for. Think of these kinds of popular representations. You've got Lars Kepler's best-selling book, The Hypnotist. You probably can't see it, but the tagline to this is, "He will trap you in a world of terror." And, you know, being trapped in a world of terror, I don't know about you. I mean, maybe some people are into that, but I think it's not how I would want to hang out with a hypnotist. We have films like Get Out, amazing film, but we see Catherine Keener just stirring the teacup, suddenly sending this black man into the sunken place by which he can cut open his head and access his brain. Hypnosis seems all-powerful, very, very scary, forms of mind control, things that people are powerless to resist. And actually, that's not the reality of a hypnotic interaction where people are grappling with how they can collaborate with a subject to achieve the kind of trance that they both want, where people are approaching it as a way of providing care, a way of providing support. But these tropes have hypnotized us. We've come to believe that this is what hypnosis is all about, so that it's a little bit scary to think of a hypnotist. It's a last resort. And what everyone I know in the UK who's ever met a hypnotist says is, well, I went to hypnotherapy after my doctor referred me, but the hypnotherapist was nothing like what I expected. It was just this guy in a jumper, or woman in a jumper. So they're almost a little bit disappointed that it's not someone with a top hat and a pocket watch. But it goes to show how much these expectations and expectancies of hypnosis is distorting the interaction and possibly blocking off some of its possibilities. Now, this is an issue that Indonesians also have to grapple with. The big fear there is less that it's going to be someone who traps you in a world of terror, and more that the hypnotist might actually be a traditional shamanic healer or dukun who uses spirits or the supernatural to provide a remedy that is Islamically haram and possibly has deleterious consequences in the afterlife. So people will try and style themselves in ways that feel very modern, very professional. They'll brand themselves as Islamic hypnotists. And the Islamic hypnotists, as you can see, wear business suits. Maybe they're going to wear kind of fun, approachable T-shirts like this gentleman here. His name's Andy Fians. Trying to convey a sense of respectability, approachability, and to brand hypnosis in a way that makes it engaging. And yet, at the same time, their efforts are undermined because there are other practitioners who do dress in ways that have a little bit more of a redolence of supernaturalism. Here you see the black and red colours. That's already taking us into the realm of sorcery. This hypnotist offers magical circumcision, a way of putting kids in a trance before their circumcision operations, which he describes using the term gendam, which is an Indonesian branch of sorcery. And the reasons they do this is because they know that those images of the sorcerer, those images of the supernatural healer, carry a certain kind of authority. They know that that is what their clients want. They know that's what might lead to them being taken seriously by their clients. So even as though they themselves don't really believe that they're sorcerers or that they're these evil, powerful hypnotists, they feel they have to tap into the stereotypes in order to be effective as hypnotic healers in Indonesia's medical marketplace. Here we see the same hypnotist. I think this is a great juxtaposition. The same hypnotist, his name is Hassan. When he's training in Jakarta and Batam, he dresses in a suit and shirt, but no tie. But then when he's marketing his services in his home area, which is much more rural, he's dressing as a traditional healer and conjuring up these images and associations of sorcery. So people have to draw on these problematic tropes even though they might not really believe in them. And in the process, there's a risk that they besmirch the name of hypnosis and hypnotherapy as a whole. So this is becoming a big debate in the Indonesian hypnosis scene. It is a paradox as to how can we engage with these regimes of visuality that can attract but also repel, that can support but can also undermine the efficacy of this symbolic healing. And I think one of the ways that anthropology can contribute is by encouraging a critical engagement with these regimes of visuality to allow a more educated and informed viewing and learning so that we can break through these stereotypes by recognizing them as stereotypes. They're fun for a film, but they're not the truth. So one of the ways that I've been trying to contribute to that project of deconstructing the regimes of visuality that surround hypnosis, as well as sharing stories of my research participants in Indonesia, is through my exhibition, Faces of Hypnosis, which is on in the Atrium Gallery right now and running until the 20th of December. I do hope any of you who've been interested in what we've discussed today will find time to have a look. It probably only takes 20 minutes to engage with everything. It's just a small little exhibition, but that will allow you to learn more about the stories of some of the people you've seen in my presentation today, other amazing people who you've not yet heard about, and to think about how visuality and images play into the realm of hypnosis, and how, given that hypnosis does work, and that it does have something to offer in terms of thinking about the mental health and well-being challenges that so many people are facing in the contemporary world, to think about how to see it anew, see it in ways that allow you to recognise its full potential. So thank you very much for listening to my talk today.